Sure, go ahead.
Okay, we are live.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. Okay, I'm going to open the Hood River City Council meeting for May 10th. It is 6 o'clock. And I'm calling the meeting to order. I'm going to go ahead and do the land acknowledgement and then the pledge. And then we will adjourn for urban renewal. As we meet tonight, let us all remember that today we are stewards of land that has been home to indigenous peoples for thousands of years before the recent arrival of the European heritage dominant culture. We honor this land's ancestors as we go about our business today. Jonathan, do you have a flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we will go ahead and recess to consider the urban renewal agenda. And I will open the meeting of the Hood River Urban Renewal Agency for May 10th, 2021. Do we have any agenda additions or corrections?
We do not.
Okay, we have not had anyone sign up for business from the audience for urban renewal.
Mayor, if I might, it appears that Commissioner Merriweather may be in the attendees. Jonathan, could you promote him? Apologize for the interruption, Mayor.
Oh, no, thank you for adding him in. Just, Dave, can you hear what's going on here?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great, great, thank you. All right, we have a consent agenda, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from April 12th. Do we have any, does anyone have any issue with those additions or corrections on those? Could I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
I would move we approve the consent agenda.
I have okay, I have a motion from Megan to approve the consent agenda and a second from Tim. Additional discussion. Roll call vote. Mark?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Tim?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Jessica?
Yes.
Gladys?
Aye.
And I don't see Hobie on. So chair votes aye. All right, those are passed. We have a public hearing on the third quarter supplemental budget. Pages 6 and 8 of our packet. Will, do you want to go over that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This supplemental budget does two sort of end of the year house cleaning items for us. It makes the budgeted appropriations for the intergovernmental loan agreement that the Urban Renewal Agency adopted at their last meeting. So that's borrowing money from the city in order to pay for the phase 1 construction of the stormwater relocation in the waterfront area. And then that money, that loan will be repaid next year. And then also budgeting for the Nichols Basin debt service and just sort of reaching back into the history of where this comes from. It's 2016 when we purchased the Nichols Basin, borrowing money from the developer of the Hampton Inn and MCMC building. And we're going to repay that loan at 0% interest from the tax increment generated by those two developments. And because we don't get a sort of before assessment estimate from the assessor, it's a bit of a guess what they were going to come onto the rolls at. And so this just trues up to what we actually paid in debt service. And because they came in so much higher than originally expected, this debt will be fully repaid in 22-23. So this isn't changing the total amount that we're going to repay. The total amount that we're going to repay is $395,000. This is just paying it off a little quicker than we thought, which is good news. It means that the properties are generating a lot of tax increment. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Does anyone have questions? Jessica?
I was just gonna move that the Urban Renewal Agency Board approve resolution URA-2021-05 to make appropriations and adjust the adopted budget for fiscal year 2020-21.
Second.
Okay, Jessica's made a motion and Dave has seconded that motion to approve resolution URA 2021-05 to make appropriations and adjust the adopted budget for fiscal year 2020-21.
And I'll just make one quick note there. The 05 was a typo carryover from the other supplemental budget you're going to look at today, but we'll just note that that's a typographical error and the
Okay,
pass this resolution you have before you.
okay, because it's 2021-01, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Is there additional discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Gladys,
Aye.
Jessica,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Megan,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. All right. That is all we have on our agenda this evening for urban renewal. Does any of the members have anything additional that they want to add this evening regarding urban renewal?
I would just like to say, if I could, I don't know if we're going to meet next month. So this may be my last meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency Board, and I have enjoyed it very much. I will not be on the Port Commission after July 1st. So thank all of you for your outstanding service, and I've really enjoyed working with you.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you so much for all your service in all your different roles over the years.
Absolutely.
Enjoy less meetings.
I plan to, believe me.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Anything else from anyone? All right. We will adjourn the urban renewal meeting, or urban renewal agency meeting, and we will reopen the Hood River City Council meeting.
Mayor, if I might, we are, at this time, we are planning on an urban renewal meeting on the 14th of June, just so everybody's aware of that.
Okay.
Let you know if something changes.
Okay. Unfortunately, if that's when it is, I will not be here. I have a family reunion in Michigan, so I don't think I'll be dialing in from Michigan for the meeting. So.
Oh, boy.
Then it is our last time with you. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dave. All right. We have business from the audience, and we have one person signed up for business from the audience, and that is Tracy Thomas Paul. Jonathan, if you want to promote her to be able to speak.
Mayor, I don't not see her logged in right now, unless she is under a business name. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I think she's under Fish Food Bank.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Tracy.
Okay, sorry, I
Alright.
never know. The thing doesn't show me what name I'm logged in on, so it's always a mystery to me too.
Yes,
Oh.
you're logged in as Fish Hood River Food Bank, and it looks like you're building a trail.
Oh, well, I am building the trail, but I'm talking as Tracy Thomas Paul, no connection to fish. So can I go ahead now?
You can go ahead, 3 minutes.
Okay, great. My name's Tracy Thomas Paul, and I want to speak out to ask that the City Council and others interested in how land use zoning decisions and recommendations move from the Planning Commission to council review and approval listen to the concerns of your planning commissioners about the process. Your planning commissioners, the 7 people appointed by the City Council, have duties set forth both in Oregon state law and similarly in the Hood River City Municipal Code, Chapter 2.36. Those codes set forth the commission's role, and more than role, its duty and powers to recommend and make suggestions to the City Council on a number of land use issues. That includes the establishment of zones and districts, building height and area and bulk, parking, setback lines, and more. Chapter 236-100 specifically says that those kinds of zoning proposed ordinances to be submitted to the councils are ones where, quote, the commission shall make its recommendation thereon in writing to the council. Chapter 236-130 says all recommendations made to the council by the commission shall be in writing. Please listen to the concerns by commissioners expressed in May 3rd's Planning Commission meeting about the failure of the report provided to the City Council on the proposed missing middle housing code to take their recommendations into account when their recommendations differed from city staff. Instead, they said city staff recommendations appeared in many places. The audio is on your city website. The full audio and video is also on YouTube, and Engage Media's uploaded 10-minute excerpt. Commissioner Irving talked about the failure of the code passed along to the council to contain the commission's recommendations. Commissioner Megan Ramey agreed that she, quote, did wish that commission's opinion had been represented on the parking issues. She said, quote, it's very tough when you have a planning commission meeting and a city council meeting on the same night, especially when both topics are ones the planning commission had passed on. She lamented, quote, we couldn't even participate in the city council meeting if we wanted to, and then commented about how rushed the review was. The City Council and the people it represents should ask why this process was rushed and why the Planning Commissioner's recommendations weren't passed along. Why was a special meeting for council scheduled at the same time as the regularly scheduled Planning Commission? Why have commissioners at least 2 times expressed concerns over the process and the ways in which their views and recommendations were not passed along when those recommendations differed from the city planning staff? The municipal and state codes don't call for city planning staff to make recommendations on land use. That's the role for the Planning Commission. The city should dig into why this failure to pass along in writing the Planning Commission's recommendations happened and didn't happen, and how that can be avoided in the future. The Planning Commission has a statutory role in these recommendations. Their recommendations must be heard and then debated by City Council, even if not adopted. Thank you for your time, and please listen to your Planning Commission's statement. Again, it's on your website and available elsewhere.
Thank you, Tracy. All right. That was business from the audience. And now we have a public hearing on the 3rd quarter supplemental budget. Will?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. I understand no one signed up to speak on this one as well, so we'll go straight to the staff report. So this is very similar to the Urban Renewal Agency supplemental budget. We just went over doing year-end adjustments, although this one has a fair bit more number of items. So number 1 in the general fund is engineering appropriations increase. And this is one that we've been tracking through all the quarterly performance reports, that it was trending above budget and in its expenditures and its revenues, but to a lesser extent. This program does mostly development review. And so to a large extent, its appropriations or its expenditures are dictated by the number and complexity of development proposals that come in the door. So we have it, on trend for 131,000 over budget, with revenues trending over budget. So bringing in more money than we thought by about 30,000. The appropriations increase is at 200,000, just to give us room for what may come in the door over the next 2 months, to ensure that we stay within budget. As even if we go over by $1, that's just as bad as going over by hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars. So that's specifically meant to give some room. It's also several just minor adjustments to the PERS aside account special payment that we made to fund the city's the 1.6 million that we put in to create a $2 million PERS side account once the state matching funds were included. And this is just due to the budget being set up, you know, and then later the payment that each proportional area is supposed to contribute. Differences in the timing and this refining the dollar amount and it being off by a couple $1,000 in a few funds. We have the stormwater fund budgeting where the money's coming in from the various financing and funding sources, being DEQ and the Urban Renewal Agency, and then putting that money to work on the phase 1 part of the construction of the stormwater line project in the waterfront area, as well as all the design and engineering work that's been going into it that supports all 4 phases. In the restricted revenue fund, we, since lodging taxes, thankfully, are coming in more robust just in the past 3 months. It's really increased our expectation for the end of the year. And I'll talk more about that when we get into the third quarter financial performance report. But 25% of our lodging tax receipts by contract go to the well, by law, by our municipal code, are due to have to be dedicated to tourism promotion, and by contract are remitted to the Chamber of Commerce for them to perform that function for us. And so more lodging tax revenues in means we need higher appropriation for remittance to the chamber.
Well, just one, I just want to clarify something. I just wanted to make sure. Under restricted revenue fund in our packet, it says Riverside Storm Line, but I think that was just a typo. Is that correct?
I think that's, yep, that's a typo. Just
okay.
Subheading there.
Okay.
But the paragraph.
The paragraph's correct. Okay.
And then lastly, creating an agency fund within our fund structure to accommodate the Mosier water and sewer billing that we executed an intergovernmental agreement on several meetings ago, which is going very well. So the city received a little over $30,000 for the first 12 months of this work. That's the work and the setup costs. And then later we'll be paid 3.7% of revenues. But we're also collecting all of their revenues and remitting all of their revenues to them. And we want to separate that from the city's books and the city's financials. So this is creating an agency fund to really transparently and separately account for that, those financial transactions. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Megan?
You have answered it already with that explanation. So I was getting confused with the 275,000 in the agency fund and then the 30,000 that we were getting. But so the 275 is they're in and out for Mosier that we're just tracking. And then does the 30,000, is that going to our general fund as revenue, or where does that?
It goes into the utility funds. So this is kind of like a side money-making opportunity for the utility funds that hopefully over the long term, as we get efficiencies and share costs, will mean lower utility rates for everyone involved. At least margins.
And is that split between the 3, or is that water and sewer alone? Or
I think I just coded it to water.
okay.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure, but I can check for you. Okay.
Yeah, maybe someday, but not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions for Will? No questions. All right. There's a motion on, no, I don't see a page number on here. We do have a motion if someone wants to make it though.
Yeah. I move that City Council approve Resolution 2021-05 to make appropriations and adjust the adopted budget for fiscal year 2020-21.
I second.
So Megan has made a motion, and was that Gladys? Okay, Gladys has made a second to approve resolution 2021-05 to make appropriations and adjust the adopted budget for fiscal year 2020-21. Additional discussion? Okay, those, we'll do a roll call vote. Gladys,
Aye.
Megan,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jessica,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. All right. We have passed the resolution for the appropriations for public hearing. So we are done with that portion, and now we'll open the work session. Any additions or corrections?
No, Mayor, there are
Right.
none.
All right, we have several items we're going to go through, and I think Will Norris will introduce our next speaker for the enterprise zone renewal.
Yes, thank you. And Jonathan, can you please promote Alice? Thank you. So I'm going to give an introduction, and then Alice and I are going to be just available to answer questions. I think we'll be fairly counselor led, and probably the specific information. And we want to spend your time on really discussing the things that are of specific interest to you. So as an overview, this is a follow-up on a December 14th item where we initiated the process to redesignate our enterprise zone. We did a fair amount of background on that meeting, but I'll just hit on that it's been in operation for several decades, and that there's 74 other communities in Oregon that use this. And I'm going to share my screen real quick just to show you what that looks like on a map. So it's really more what cities or communities don't use this rather than who does use this. It's most everyone keeps an enterprise zone going in their community. And it was for that reason that staff recommended continuing and redesignating, is so that we maintain our competitiveness when businesses are looking to site in Oregon, but then also in Washington or Idaho, who have other business recruitment programs. So that's why we chose to redesignate and start the process. Going through, you can also decide if you want to change the boundaries. Right now, it's basically everything zoned commercial or an industrial as part of our enterprise zone. But that during redesignating process, some of our census tracts are not eligible anymore. So that is in your packet, and it's the map right behind the staff report, show you what areas are prohibited, and that's overlaid with where our enterprise zone is currently. So you can change the geographic boundaries, and then you can also change what business types are allowed. And we bring up specifically hotels, motels, and resorts because Cascade Locks, City of Cascade Locks, and Hood River County have chose to remove those business types from the enterprise parts of the enterprise zone that they control. Staff here at the city is specifically recommending you retain those for several reasons. I would say just real colloquially, it comes down to an argument of if it's not broke, don't fix it. So we're really recommending status quo. Things are working well. Let's just continue on. And two is that if any business wishes to get an abatement of more than 3 years, you'll get to see those individually and give an up or down on that specific proposal. So this is a way to not out of hand prohibit something before you get a chance to see it and the merits of a specific proposal. And then just number three is hotels, motels, resorts are a significant driver of employment, economic activity, and lodging taxes for the city. So there's some benefits there as well. So with that sort of broad overview of very skimming the background and kind of what the key questions in front of you are, I'll just open it up for counselor-driven questions. And Alice, representing Mid-Columbia Economic Development District, who's our zone manager, will be here to tackle some of the more technical questions.
Great, thank you. Jessica?
Thanks, Mayor. I was just going to say I'm going to recuse myself from the discussion since MCAD is my employer. If you have any kind of technical questions that Alice, for example, couldn't answer, then I'll be here to answer those. But I'll turn my camera off.
Great, thanks for your disclosure, Jessica. Up front, appreciate it. Others, questions about this? Megan?
I don't think I know the answer, but I did just want to check in. So we can change the boundaries to be smaller than proposed, but we can't be bigger and go into these census blocks that are no longer meeting criteria, right?
I'll let Alice, the answer is yes, but I'll let Alice provide any more.
So the boundaries feel very weird given our commercial districts, but if that's the reality, that's the reality. Okay, and then I guess big picture, like the goal of this is to be attracting businesses who wouldn't otherwise be coming to Hood River. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say the goal is twofold: to provide the broad economic development benefits as well as to remain competitive with surrounding jurisdictions. And I think the trade-off is largely a small number of years of tax abatement for more meaningful infrastructure investments that will keep a company in the region for a while.
I believe, Alice, there's minimum wage requirements as well. So it may help with boosting wages potentially.
Yeah, certainly. And that's especially true for the extended abatements. I believe it's like 130% of the county average wage.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Megan. You go ahead.
Alex, you were around for it. Did the county or Cascade Blocks talk about why they chose to remove hotels and motels this time around?
You know, I wasn't part of those meetings, so I think that they were just business types they weren't interested in incentivizing specifically.
Thank you.
I don't know the reasoning either. I do know, just as one point of fact, that the county doesn't retain nearly as much of the lodging taxes for general government services as we do. So it's at least one difference in maybe the incentive structure there.
Mark?
So would these incentives work for commercially developed housing types, like an apartment building in the C2 zone? Would that be applicable to this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't believe that housing is applicable, but if Jessica wants to hop in, if she thinks otherwise, then that would be fine. But otherwise, I don't think that housing is applicable.
Yeah, it's not. It has to be a traded sector industry, something that's making something that's sold elsewhere, or I guess hotels.
Gotcha. So it can't be commercial on the bottom and apartments on the top and qualify for some such thing.
The commercial on the bottom, maybe?
Even the commercial is not really the focus of this. It's more focused on like manufacturing, processing, shipping, like call centers are eligible, headquarter type facilities, but any sort of shop wouldn't really be eligible for the enterprise zone.
Yeah, Jessica or Alice, correct me if I say anything wrong here, but I think the key is sort of attracting businesses whose primarily business is associated extraterritorially to the city.
Yeah, I think that that's generally true, although, you know, mostly manufacturing. So a number of breweries have been qualified in the city of Hood River. Yeah, that's export.
And then some of our high-tech manufacturing as well. Mm-hmm.
Yep, Orbital UAV is a recent awardee, and their estimated investment was $6.2 million. 6.5, excuse me.
That Orbital was a kind of an offshoot of the UAV industry.
It's a UAV company.
So how many companies have we had over a period of time, or how many do we currently have that are using this?
Yeah, so in the last 5 years, there's 6 companies in the city of Hood River. In the zone, in the full zone, there's, I think, 10. In the city of Hood River, there's been 61 full-time jobs created. The estimated value of the investment is just shy of $27 million. And they've mostly been manufacturing. So Hood River Distillers, Hood River Juice, Ferment and Freem, all in sort of agriculture, food-based manufacturing, as well as the Nichols Hotel and Orbital UAV.
So Hood River Distillers, now they've been around a long time. Was this some addition that they did or some change to do something different than they were doing before?
Yeah, it requires an investment of a new facility, new equipment. So any full-time jobs have to be in addition. So it can be eligible to a company that's already located in the Gorge. Freems was in 2019 tax year. So it's eligible to local companies, but just for them to expand their facilities here.
I guess it's always a guess on who wouldn't expand or who wouldn't move here if they didn't have this. You know, it's like, well, we're moving to Hood River. I don't care how we get there. Abatement, you know, enterprise zone, it's not going to matter. Or we're going to expand here because we don't want to move somewhere else. You know, then you're just kind of giving away your tax dollars. So it's kind of trying to figure that out. How many of those places, of those 6 that we have, would not have done what they did if they hadn't gotten this? You know, it's kind of a guess.
I have
Yeah,
a
I think-
question. Alice,
Gladys?
you mentioned that housing was excluded. What else is excluded?
I would say in this case, it's more of a what is included than what is excluded. I would say most uses, and so this sort of gets to the, yes, there is a loss of tax revenue, but I would say that the scope of the allowable projects is fairly narrow. So the eligible businesses specifically, are those manufacturing, processing, shipping, call centers, headquarters. Most other business types would be ineligible.
What about a transportation, for example, like Uber, like business?
If there was like a headquarters type facility being developed, it could possibly be allowed. But certain things like financial businesses would not be allowed. So I think that one would be, I don't know, probably not allowed.
Additional questions? Tim?
Thanks, Mayor. I just, Will, you had suggested that that we would review these applications for these tax abatements. Is that correct?
If if the tax abatements are for more than the standard 3 years, they will come before the council. I specifically remember Orbital coming in front of the council for a yes or no.
So it says tax abatements for 3 to 5 years. So anything up until 3 years would just be automatic.
Yeah, the standard 3 years would just be based on the qualifications of within the existing framework. So it does have, as Alice noted, it has to be a certain, the wages have to be a certain amount above the median. It needs to be adding physical plant to the city, adding jobs and so forth. But if you met those requirements and you just wanted the standard 3 year, correct, that doesn't go in front of city council.
And so this is really typically to incentivize businesses. I mean, that's what I'm hearing you say, is that, really the decision to include or not include certain business types is whether you want to incentivize them to be here or not.
Correct. Yep, here versus somewhere else too, because that's really, I think, the crux of the recommendation that we're making is to the mayor's point, you don't know, is, you know, a social science kind of issue where you can never have a control group because you're moving in time and you don't know what people would have done otherwise. But what we do know is there's so many other communities that do offer this. That's where we're making our recommendation is competitiveness against other Oregon communities.
Right. You know, I'm just, you know, I'm not making a value judgment one way or the other. It's just, you know, the motel, hotel, resort aspect of this and incentivizing that to occur more in the designated zones is definitely a policy decision that has implications for our town with respect to the services that we provide and how much it's going to cost to facilitate those businesses.
Sure, Councilor Cunha, I would offer maybe just also the point that this in no way circumvents land use planning rules. So everything goes through development review, zoning, you know, planning commission, all that. So, you know, you're not going to get something in a hotel isn't going to get this and then be able to build in a zone where it's not otherwise allowed, like would be able to build on lot 1. You know.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to point out that it does have implications, because really the implications are, you know, if we include those types of business in here that we're incentivizing, those types of business is to set up shop here. So that's definitely, you know, and I think there's implications for existing businesses, for existing hotels and folks that are already here in town. So, you know, incentivizing folks other than those here has implications for them as well. And from what you're saying here is that if we do this, there's a window of opportunity where we can alter it, and that's like 6 months.
Yep, the hotel motel designation could be changed for six months, so pretty much until the end of 2021.
Yeah.
But it could also be revoked at any time. So for example, if you choose not to do it now and have regrets, then you could technically add it in later. But if you're 2 years into this redesignated zone and decide that it's no longer a fit for the city, you could choose to revoke that, but you can't go back once you do that.
Thank you. Those were my comments.
Megan?
I guess, assuming we're done with questions, I maybe have opinions, but I guess I don't know if we're there yet.
Yeah, I'm a little bit, I'm kind of could go either way with the hotel motel thing. I mean, I'm not sure that we need more of those, but then again, we're going to have quite a few short-term rentals that are going to not be able to be used here very shortly. Maybe some by later this year, and then in a couple more years more, because they're going to be grandfathered and then they're going to be done. And at that point, you know, then are more people going to buy second homes because they can't find any place to stay here? So people can't, you know, other people that work here can't. So in some ways, you know, maybe we will need an addition on a hotel when those things happen. So, you know, it's kind of like, oh, should we do that or should we not do that? So I'm kind of torn on that particular subject. Megan?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess big picture, you know, the larger enterprise zones, you know, having parity with 70 other places in the state seems reasonable. I guess more than the like, will we need it or not in the future? Hotels and motels to me seem like we don't need an extra inducement for them to be here. If your market research says that Hood River, you know, the Hood River market would support another hotel, you're going to build it in Hood River, because building it in Cascade Locks or the Dalles or even Parkdale, like that's a different market. And so I'm having a hard time seeing how getting rid of some tax money makes anyone build here that wouldn't already be building, because unlike manufacturing where, yeah, you could do that in a suburb of Portland, or you could do that here. A hotel here is a hotel here. So I'm having a hard time seeing how we're not just giving away money and not getting anything that wouldn't already be built here, more so than any other industry.
Yeah, the only benefit there is transient room taxes. I mean, for the city. Not the people, just the municipality.
Whether we give away whether we give them a property tax abatement or not, we would get the TRT money, and that's great. But
right.
I think they would be built here anyway, even if we didn't give them 3 years of abatement. So I'm just not seeing what would get built here that wouldn't already be built here if the market supports that.
I think you're right, Megan. Tim, did you have a?
Yeah,
something?
I just, I wanted to follow up that there are costs associated with having more people in town too. There's traffic, there's policing, there's garbage. So it's not a cost-free addition.
Well, we could, if people are leaning towards not having a hotel motel, we can add that to the motion of excluding that if we want to. Mark?
So I'm supportive of the general idea. I think that, if you look at Orbital, for example, they could have gone to any city in the gorge, and so having this extra little carrot was useful. On the hotel stuff, we've only had, since I've been on council, the only one that's taken advantage of it, I think, is Hampton, and so I guess I don't think it's a terrible thing. I guess I don't feel strongly that it's a bad thing. I think that I'm not completely, I wouldn't be hurt if we ruled it out, but I don't think there's any need to rule it out. So I think staff's sort of saying things have been working well, let's just keep it the way it is a good argument from my perspective.
Others that want to weigh in? Eric?
If I could, I was still back on the question phase, but before I get to that, I'll say I'm sort of falling where Mark's falling, that if it that I'm just not sure. I'd like to see it renewed, I guess, is what I'm saying. But I did, and I'm sure my question is this, and I'm sure there's a really long answer, but I wondered if we could just have the short answer: is how are these maps derived? I mean, I see that there's these 4 economic points of qualification, and someone must have gone through that, but it's not clear if they're looking at residences and looking at individual incomes, or we're looking at businesses. And how is I guess just at the short answer is, how is the map derived? I understand it's contracted, but what was the process that was gone through to set the map?
Yeah, certainly.
Alice, kind of that, yeah.
We work with the state to get the census data. So it's census data. And so the block group is sort of this imperfect but granular way of looking at different parts of the city and the income levels. And that was the closest we could come to qualifying the city of Hood River.
Income levels of individual residents, not businesses, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? I don't see any other questions. Does anyone want to try a motion one way or another, with or without the motel hotel?
Yes, I think I feel strongly, so I guess I'm going to. And correct me if I'm doing this wrong, but I move to direct staff to return with an enterprise zone redesignation resolution, maintaining the existing zone boundaries and excluding hotel, motel, and resorts for further consideration at the June 14th regular city council meeting.
Okay, we have a motion from Megan that modifies the suggested motion to exclude motel, hotel, and resorts.
I'll second.
And we have a second by Tim. All right, more discussion on that?
Could I just ask a point of clarification? Do I understand that this, did I hear Megan say this is going to come back up at a June meeting, right? So we're going to reconsider that in the June 14th meeting? Is that what the motion is?
Right, this will give us direction of how to draft up that resolution for you.
I would say that probably, tonight is the direction we need to take a direction, because the resolution needs to say what direction we're going. So, I mean, we will be revoting, but we need to have the resolution correct when it's brought back to us. Mark?
Did I understand that if we make a motion to remove hotels and lodges tonight, we can add it back in with a window of 2021 or 6 months after approval? Is that the, yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, additional questions before we vote? Comments? Okay, I'm gonna roll call vote on this motion then. Megan,
Yes.
Gladys,
Aye.
Eric,
Nay?
Tim,
Aye.
Mark,
Yes.
and Jessica abstaining, is that correct? Okay. And chair votes yes. So we have passed that motion.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Alice, for all your help on this, and to McKed generally for managing this zone for the city.
Thank you. Thanks, Alice. All right. Council work plan project update for safe routes to schools. I think, is that Jonathan? And who is that that's going to be doing that?
I'm going to promote my consultant here, and much like Will, do a short introduction, and then she's going to present for us tonight. I'll stay here, obviously, to field questions and help Katie work through any kind of ideas that come up. So I'm Jonathan Splovengill. It's nice to see everyone here, Madam Mayor, councilors, thank you. I'm here tonight as the city's project manager for this year's Safe Routes to School project identification program. It's an ODOT funded grant project centered around multimodal transportation for school children going to and from Hood River Middle and May Street schools. Last year, the city was awarded a grant fully funding the services of Portland-based Alta Planning and Design to work with our community to develop an adoptable and actionable Safe Routes to School project plan here in the city of Hood River. Tonight, I have invited Katie, the lead consultant from Alta, to update you with where we are in this project and what to expect in the next few months. As a part of the 2021 work plan, the project team and I are hoping to gather insight and input from you as we near the beginning of the recommendation drafting phase. Ultimately, we want to know, are the project priorities aligned with the council's priorities? And what other issues do you have or have heard from the community that we need to address related to safe routes to school? So no further delay. Katie, go ahead.
Thanks, Jonathan. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. As Jonathan mentioned, my name is Katie Celine. I'm a planner at Alta Planning and Design, based in Portland. I'm active transportation planning, design, and engineering firm. And yeah, excited to be here and give an update on the Hood River Safe Routes to School plan. Looks like I can share my screen. And so, Jonathan, do you have a preference, or does council have a preference whether we do questions kind of throughout or hold till the end? I'm happy either way.
Let's go ahead and just hold to the end, and then we can backtrack if we need to.
Okay, that sounds good. My Zoom window organized here. Great. All right, so what I will be covering this evening, I'm giving a little overview of the Safe Routes to School plan process, talking about our existing conditions work that we've done so far, an overview of our community outreach process, what we've done, what we have scheduled over the next couple of weeks, and then sharing some of our preliminary Safe Routes to School routes, and then some details about our upcoming Safe Routes to School walk audits, and then hopefully some good time for discussion at the end. And so as Jonathan mentioned, this project is a part of the Oregon Department of Transportation's Project Identification Program. So Hood River is one of a number of communities around the state that we're working with to create these Safe Routes to School plans over the course of this year. And the purpose of these plans is really to make it safer and more accessible for students and families to walk, bike, and take transit. And these plans, Hood River plan will include both construction recommendations for specific infrastructure projects and routes, as well as education and outreach recommendations to encourage more students and families to walk and bike. And we found that some of the biggest benefits of doing this work, putting together these plans, is that they facilitate collaboration around Safe Routes to School initiatives between the different agencies and schools and folks who are interested and passionate about Safe Routes to School in the community. It's really an opportunity to all get on the same page and align priorities and work over the coming couple of years. And then really specifically, we identify projects that feed right into the ODOT Safe Routes to School program construction and education grants, or the next cycle of those will come around this coming winter or like early spring 2022. So the timing of this being completed will really position Hood River well to have projects and ideas to feed right into those grant applications. And then also just aligning with other planning initiatives, both that the city has underway and school district and other jurisdictions and agencies that are participating in the process. And I'll just reiterate, Jonathan mentioned the schools that we're working with, Hood River Middle School and May Street. The plan area that kind of in the scope of the project is all streets within a quarter-mile radius of each school, and then key Safe Routes to School locations within a mile. And we do have a project management team that's been assembled to work with us on this. And we have the City of Hood River, ODOT Region 1, Hood River School District, Columbia Area Transit, Hood River Parks and Rec, and Mid-Columbia Economic District. And you could see a really cute screenshot from our kickoff meeting. Slide here. And so some of the project priorities we've been talking about so far, just truly the importance of improving safety and encouraging more students to walk and bike, connections between neighborhoods, schools, parks, and transit stops and routes, finding and identifying funding opportunities for future construction projects, and keeping in mind that we want to avoid band-aid solutions for hazardous areas that may be identified. And then this graphic just kind of shows the arc of the planning process that we're working on. We kicked off the project back in December. We've had a couple of project management team meetings. We've conducted background data collection and done a plan review. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then right now we're kind of right in the middle of our outreach process and navigating the perils of COVID to plan our school safety assessments. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides as well. And then, so that's happening now, spring 2021. And then looking ahead at the summer, as Jonathan mentioned, we will have our kind of recommendations phase where we'll be pinning down specifically what we want to include, continuing to meet with the project management team, circling back with the schools, and then we'll have a 3-week public comment period as well later in the summer before we finalize the Safe Routes to School plan this coming September. And so our existing conditions work that we've done thus far, we have looked at demographics, collision data, completed a plan review, and looked at transit connections. And this is all compiled in our existing conditions memo, which was included in the meeting packet for this evening. And so we've wrapped that up, but are still very much interested in any feedback from council. If there's anything that should be included in there, please let us know. And next, I'll talk a little bit about our community engagement. So far, we have done a round of outreach using an interactive public input map. We've done, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. We've done some interviews that were done in Spanish in partnership with CAT to find out a little bit more from parents whose students use transit to get to school. A couple interviews there. We've done some virtual walk audits with school leadership at each school, as well as a focus group with members of Streets Alive who had been involved in some of the previous Safe Routes to School work with the schools. And then upcoming, we have our Safe Routes to School walk audits planned. Those will take place in both English and Spanish at each school. We'll talk more about that in a couple slides. And then we'll have our draft Safe Routes to School plan public review period, August 16th to September 3rd. And the image on the slide is just an example of one of the outreach materials that we've been using to invite parents and community members to join us for the walk audit happening next week. And so the next couple of slides are a closer look at our interactive Safe Routes to School map. And so this was promoted through both school and city communication channels. And it's an interactive kind of wiki map, if you've used those, where participants were asked to draw points or routes illustrating how they get to school and where they may have suggestions or challenges along the way. And so we'll be using this feedback to guide our field work as we come out and take a closer look at some of these locations. And then they'll also feed into suggested route maps that we'll be making as a part of this project as well. And so we had about 60 unique IP addresses use the map. So that's sort of roughly users, mostly parents with some community members and folks who chose sort of would prefer not to answer. And then demographics, we had 76% of users were white, 6% Latino, 3% Native American, and 15% prefer not to say or selected other. And then a more zoomed in look at each school. This is just a screenshot of the feedback that we received through the map. And some of the trends here around Hood River Middle School, you can see the May Street and 13th intersection really comes through as a frequently used and commented on location, as well as 18th Street, and then some of the other just routes people are using, Montello, Taylor, and Sherman here to the north. And then similarly, May Street, 12th was the very much the most common route mentioned on the map. And then May Street for both schools, Wilson Street and 9th here. And then the Indian Creek Trail in sort of a couple different iterations. And then Pine Street and Taylor, also very frequently mentioned. And so the next slide here, just sharing some of our preliminary safe routes to school routes. These are derived from kind of a synthesis of the information and feedback we got through the map, conversations that we've had with the schools and project management team, as well as some of the context from the plan review that we did. And so I'll go through each of these and just add a little bit more context, but I think it's important to keep in mind that this is still very much preliminary, and like our team has not been out to Hood River yet. We haven't done our facility inventory. This is very likely to change, and I think we're here presenting to you all at a perfect point to get your feedback and make sure that the locations and kind of things that are being discussed are in line with your priorities. And so I think this is a key place that we would like feedback and to hear from council. And so just a little bit more context, definitely 12th Street from Pacific Ave up to Taylor and Pine Street was the most common route overall, liked by the most number of participants. The project management team has identified this as a key connection with the Seaver Crop neighborhood, and map users mentioned difficult crossings at Pine Street and A Street and Wilson, lots of support for improved crossings there. And the Indian Creek Trail was mentioned as kind of a parallel and sort of alternative route that some people used, and there was kind of opinions back and forth there. And then May Street, kind of an obvious one, major project management team priority. Both schools talk about May Street extensively. Some of the interesting comments from the map, families talked about using it to access Hood River Middle School from the west. In particular, users commented on inconsistent bike lanes, speeding, that it's an important connection to West Side neighborhoods. And I just wanted to mention that we will definitely be keeping in mind the fact that there's the TSP amendment project for this corridor, adding bike lanes between 12th and 17th. And then Wilson Street and 9th, very common route to May Street. We have the context from the plan review that A Street and Wilson is a proposed addition to the bicycle network. So that's important context for keeping in mind. And then definitely hearing from both from parents and community members, participants on the PMT, the importance of connections between the Heights and downtown. And there were some ideas about specific routes there. And then Belmont, as well as Fairview, came up on the interactive map. That's starting to get a little further away from the school, but important to keep in mind as a common bike route to the west side. And then 18th Street came up on the interactive map, and we know it's a city priority with the TSP project there as well. And so I'm sure lots of ideas on this slide. We can definitely come back to this and discuss. But I'll just mention to close a little bit of detail on our upcoming walk audits happening next week. We have May Street Elementary happening May 19th, and then Hood River Middle School planned for May 20th. And at these walk audits, we'll have a morning session to observe student arrival and meet with family members. We'll have groups happening in English and in Spanish. And then afternoon sessions to observe dismissal, where those are just going to be project management team members to meet and see how students and families are using the existing facilities and really kind of focus in on the area, particularly right around each school. And so these will be physically distanced. The group sizes are limited in line with Oregon Health Authority regulations. We'll be requiring masks and bringing extras in case anyone forgets. And I feel really confident that we can do this in a safe, comfortable way, and we've been working really closely with both schools to make sure that they're excited about this and that this feels like worth doing. And so, yeah, so we're looking forward to these. And we'll also be doing a facilities inventory while we're out there, kind of in between the two events. And with that, happy to answer any questions. Or Jonathan, if you have anything to add.
No, thanks, Katie. Definitely open the floor for conversation. And counselors, Mayor, let us know if you want to go back to any slides. If not, we can take down a presentation to see the panel.
Great. Thank you, Katie and Jonathan. That was a great presentation. I like looking at all those maps, and I filled out the interactive thing online, and that was really helpful to see all the comments that other people were making on that. So that tool is really, really good. Does anyone have questions around different things specific? We've got a lot of questions. Okay, let's go with Megan. You had your hand up first, I think.
I usually do. I guess maybe briefly, like, but the connections between the Heights and downtown, like what specifically is meant by that? I know that's a larger important thing for transportation, but I guess I don't, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think of a lot of children living in downtown. So is that more that it's like the, Columbia Street neighborhoods, or what neighborhoods in particular would need to be connected better? And I'm sure there's plenty of it. Or what else is that?
That's a great question. And that's come up. I guess I'm not as familiar with where students live necessarily, but I just know that through the interactive online map, that's been mentioned, and folks have been indicating that they use that route, and that the project management team had also brought up the importance of that route. And so that's definitely one of the things that I'm interested to really walk around and get a sense of when we come out next week, just to personally learn more about what that looks like. But I think you're right that may not rise to the top of like a safe routes to school priority list, but would it have safe routes to school benefits and be like a safe routes to school, a part of a safe routes to school network? I think it could.
Sure. If I can jump in here to add,
Yeah.
Megan, we have talked about the Columbia neighborhoods and the Wasco neighborhoods and the neighborhoods that are not in the Heights. And we do want to remind everybody that this isn't a Heights project. This is a city project. If you do take the 1 mile radius from the schools, you get the entire city limits. But the focus is a 1/4 mile from the school. So we may not get detailed information for the Columbia neighborhoods and Wasco neighborhoods from this project, but key spots we can just definitely discuss. For my interpretations of the maps, the opinions have really focused in on 9th and Park and Serpentine and not gone beyond that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely Serpentine was mentioned a number of times.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, no, that's a good reminder, Gail, that a mile out is covers all of that area to the north. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you just say a quarter mile, there will be key spots that are trouble spots within that quarter mile that will be routes that come from Columbia and Wasco. So I think there'll be portions of it that will still be covered in connections to downtown. Who else had a question? Gladys, and then Mark.
Thank you, Katie and Jonathan. You mentioned, Katie, that 67% parents actually completed the interactive maps and that 76% of those were white parents and only 6% Latino. That's really concerning, especially when I hear you say that we are using this data to guide our work. 26% are Hispanic in that area and only 6% of those actually went ahead and completed that interactive map. So what's being done to make sure that we are getting 20% of those individuals? As a council, we have made a commitment to equity, and I'd like to know what's being done to intentionally outreach those individuals and those families to ensure that we get information that truly reflects those individuals that live in the vicinity, to ensure that we are doing equitable work.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's yeah, a really good point. And I can tell you what we're doing so far, and we definitely are in the midst of this, and I welcome any additional ideas for how we can reach the Latino community more effectively. But so far, what we're doing is working with each school, with Hood River Middle School and May Street, with the principals, and then they've each identified the person on their staff who typically works closely with Spanish-speaking parents, and they're doing specific outreach for the past couple of weeks to call, and as they're talking to parents, making sure that they're specifically mentioning these events and inviting them to attend. And then if they're not able to attend, or just kind of like as a part of that conversation, they're just asking them about their priorities and needs, and kind of getting some like feedback during that interaction to, you know, not everyone can come to this event. So making sure that we're collecting that information as they're talking to parents as well. And one of Alta's, actually our lead engineer in the Portland office, is a native Spanish speaker. And so he is coming out to lead the Spanish language walk audits. And it's a great opportunity to get him out to Hood River anyways, and he'll be a part of the facility inventory and be like really on the front lines of coming up with some of the recommendations. And it's great to have him also, also be the one to do that outreach with Spanish-speaking parents.
Katie, I hear that, but I'll continue to state my concern that now we're relying on an external individual who doesn't know our community, and that is who we are relying on to be the expert in our community. It's just simply not going to work. You really need to collaborate with existing partners, and what's being done right now is not working. So I really think that you have to be working with those partners, such as the Next Door and many other agencies that do this as a job, because we need to make sure that we're getting important feedback from all families and not just the white families, because that's the usual folks that we end up hearing from. And
absolutely,
we can't have that. So, you know, I know this is hard and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we really do have to be
No,
intentional.
that's fine.
And 6% is not acceptable. And I don't think I could say that I speak for us all because of that commitment to equity that we made, that 6% is unacceptable and that there needs to be more that's done. And to be honest, I don't think that it should be solely up to me to give folks all the advice on where to go and who to connect with. That we as a city have to be very intentional. If that means hiring staff that's from the community to do so, then let's do so. I'd be happy to make a motion to ensure that we have more staffing, Spanish speaking staff to help with this project. 6% is not okay.
Counselor, I'm happy to provide that direction. If that is council's direction, I am happy to provide that direction to the project team. Alta Planning has been hired as part of a grant. So, we can provide some additional input. The survey was just one of the various methods that we're using. Again, we have heard council on this and continue, I think, to improve on those. But again, I would be happy to take direction from the council to provide to staff.
We have made a commitment as a council to social equity. We have made a commitment as a council. I don't think I need to be the only counselor that says so.
So I think what we have to do is if we want to do a different direction from what Alta's doing, additional work, additional money, additional people, additional different surveys that are done in additional ways from what the contract said that we were going to do with Alta already, that the full council has to approve that. Because we
So
approved.
who else on here thinks that 6% is acceptable? I'd like to hear from the rest of counselors. Are you comfortable with those numbers?
Okay, Jessica?
Well, I agreed 6% for an interview or for the survey is not acceptable, but I did hear Katie say that the schools are one-on-one calling up all of the Latino families to get their input. Is that what you were saying, Katie? So the schools who have local staff that have those relationships with those families are doing direct outreach.
Yes. And we did share all of the outreach materials with, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, I apologize, but with staff at the Next Door. And I believe that they shared that out to help spread the word. But I think we can also, if there's interest from council in reopening the interactive online map, I think that's something that we could do and redouble our efforts in the Latino community to make sure that we're getting responses and hearing from folks that way. That is only one of the outreach methods, and really the walk audit piece is, I would say, the main event of the outreach work that we're doing. And I think my thought on it would be, let's see who comes to that and adapt from there. Or
So
absolutely we can do both.
Walk me through what that looks like, because you showed us a slide that it says in order for you to attend this walking group that you have to RSVP. So when you're sending out an email, I'm imagining it's going to only go to those individuals who are tech savvy and able to open the email in order to RSVP. So can you understand what other methods are being taken to address that?
That's where we absolutely are working with both schools and the person on their staff who is like the liaison with the Latino community to do like more robust outreach to invite parents to come by making phone calls. And it seems like they have kind of regular ways that they're interacting with families, and that they're like, that's on their list of things to mention and repeat and encourage Spanish speaking families to come. But I agree, we don't normally have the RSVP process as a barrier, but that's something we've had to add with COVID to try to make sure we are managing our group size. And so we are trying with an RSVP process. If anyone does an RSVP and comes, we are definitely prepared to kind of roll with what happens day of. We have ways to have a couple different staff lead groups and accommodate a variety of numbers of people who actually come, but trying to keep a handle on that in advance with the RSVP, but I do recognize that it creates a bit of a barrier.
I think that because there likely would be a barrier or could be a barrier with the technology piece, with the survey part, and that may be why the numbers are low if they're for Latino responses. But I think that if there was some way to quantify that the teacher or teachers that are in charge of individually talking to Spanish-speaking parents that don't have the technology, and they are writing down, we contacted, 40 people, 40 families, and 20 of those said, check the boxes. They want this, they want this. We're having problems here, we're having problems there, getting across the streets. Then we could say, well, they couldn't fill out the survey, but they did give us the feedback. If we say we contacted 40, 20 gave us feedback, then the numbers might actually be, 15% and not 6%. But because we don't have that quantifiable number, it's just the teachers are getting a hold of the parents. That's all we know. It's nothing quantifiable. It makes it
Absolutely.
seem like maybe it's lower, but maybe it really isn't. But it's just the quantifiability of it, because it's not a survey where you're clicking something and you can count the numbers. So it would feel better for us, I'll tell you, if we had that.
And
Absolutely.
Mayor, I think another way, I think it's important to recognize that they are actually coming on the ground. And so we'll actually be observing. So it's not just a feedback driven process. The project management team is going to be observing how kids get to school. And so they will actually interact with community members who may have barriers to interacting in a variety of ways. We'll be observing those locations.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is when you do the thing on the 19th and 20th, are you going to have tables where people can come up and sort of see about the project, or is it just interacting with clipboards kind of thing?
We would typically have both. And in this circumstance, we're going to have neither because of COVID. I'm going to have individual kind of handouts for people to learn about the project, and to have a map to refer to and make notes for themselves as we do the observation. But we will not have the boards at this point, just thinking of trying to keep people socially distant, and the fact that we'll be outside and sort of moving. Typically we would go inside and be in more of a meeting space, but we're kind of adapting our typical program to align with the COVID regulations that we have.
Is there a time in the public input process where people will have non-technical sticker dots that they can stick on intersections, or you're not anticipating that between now and September? Right.
So
and I'm just
typically,
asking, I know you're in a toughie. Yeah.
I mean, it's a great question, and I think we have some room to pivot if council provides that direction. But the current thinking is to do the walk audits this spring so that we're able to provide recommendations and have a safe routes to school plan by September, just with, there's all the different agencies, and the city is working on so many transportation projects right now that it feels important to get safe routes to school in the mix and get those priorities that we are really hearing from folks in there as early as possible.
Yeah.
Which so we wouldn't have, typically we would do just what you're saying, like more of an analog participation process during the walk audit as part of a community meeting, but we currently aren't going to have the tactile piece. We're just going to have discussion and then and go from there. But we could, the other alternative that's been discussed is pushing the walk audits to the fall, and then we would not be as constrained by COVID to be able to do more of the physical meeting and be less constrained with COVID.
Right. But even, in your walk thing, when you're talking to people, you guys will be taking notes and writing down things and asking them
Oh, yeah.
all that stuff, right? So
We'll be talking to people and marking up a map,
yeah.
but it won't be as participatory as we would love to do in terms of people interacting.
Right. For Gladys, I think that it's a data point, not the whole thing. I mean, there were only 60 people that gave the survey, so it's not super well represented in general, and so I think we need to look at it as the whole thing and not did we do a good job inclusion wise through each of these different things and the different outreach, and because we're using different methods to try to make sure that we're covering these different groups. So that by itself didn't really bother me. One recommendation is after we do the walk thing, maybe you could reopen the survey online kind of thing. It's it's just a thought that oh, and now I know what now I know about it. I'm interested in going and finding that and plugging it in. Just an idea. And then lastly,
we can absolutely do that.
Yeah. And then lastly, the question that I had is, and I'm super excited about the Pacific Avenue to Wilson piece, because that's just the gnarliest, unsafest little piece for, to connect those two parts of the community with biking. And will the outcome of this process be enough to apply for grants for that? I think the answer is yes, but I just want to make sure that we're sort of queuing, the output of this is queuing up our ability to ask for design grants and building grants and things like that, right?
Yes, that's the idea.
Cool.
Yes,
and the information that we provide is really specifically, you'll have everything you need to apply for the ODOT Safe Routes to School grants. But we've also had a number of communities we've worked with very easily apply for the Community Paths program grants. If you've seen those come through, it's a newer ODOT pot of money that they have that really aligns nicely with Safe Routes to School initiatives. And then kind of from there, it's not as specifically on a platter, but would tee up other funding opportunities as well.
Is state parks local government grant applicable to this stuff? Have you seen
that one? I think the benefit is that we will have a list, kind of an agreed upon list of the priority projects, and so community, we can use that to talk about how to fund it.
Cool. And there's wiggle room still between the concept that we're developing here and the actual path, right? So if a path says, oh, it'd be better to go up that hill here or over a block. That's within the flexibility for the next phase, I assume.
Yes, and that's one of the key questions for council is, what do you hear about? What routes do you hear about?
Right.
Or what routes have you, what issues are not identified? So safe routes to school issues have not been identified.
Yeah, I think everyone knows, 12th and 13th. I mean, it's a given. May Street at 12th and 13th and Pacific and 12th. And, those are kind of, we all know those are issues. Those are dangerous for our kids.
Yeah.
But are there other things we're missing?
I mean, I would put, and it came up in your information, is that Taylor Pine crossing, because, the Alphabet neighborhood kids aren't going to walk south 2 blocks to go cross it at A. They're gonna get to Pine Street, right? So making sure that those 2 crossings are strong too would be my recommendation as far as that's concerned. But I think this is a great map. I think it's a great project, and I hope that it sort of says, that was cool. What's next? What should we add to this starter network of safe routes to school? And then they'll just restate that one piece is especially tricky and is especially important. I think that if we can fix that, we'll get a lot of props in the community for fixing a tricky part, the Pacific to A Street part. So thanks.
Yeah.
Others? Let me go. I'm going to go with Jessica and then Tim and then you, Gladys, because I'm trying to get everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Katie. This is a great project, and I know that this piece of it is very important. So to tee us up to get the other state pots of money. So I was excited to have this grant. I appreciate what you're talking about, because I was going to ask about more targeted Latino outreach, and it's good to hear the school using their relationships. Do you know right now how the RSVPs are going? Is that an area that we could be helping with as council for either the English or the Spanish?
I actually haven't looked today, and we didn't have very many as of last week.
Okay.
Like a handful.
I also want to step in really quickly. On the city's bandwidth, we haven't yet announced on our webpage or on Facebook about the walk audits. We wanted to have tonight's meeting to discuss before we open that up. So that might also help garner more signups. So our sourcing for the walk audit attendance hasn't completely ramped up yet.
Okay. And we can help push that out when we see it. I will do that. And also reopening the survey, I think would be great. And we can find ways to push that out. I do think I thought it was interesting, the connection between the Heights and downtown actually kind of ties in with our next project that we're going to be talking about, the historic highway, because the issue is crossing Cascade, and that there was some pieces in that map that were going to be really important at making that better. So I thought it was a good tie-in, even if it's not going to be a priority of this project, given how far away it is from the schools. You probably have seen or thinking about the Dan Burden walk audits that were done. Like, I know there was one for May Street. Yeah. Okay. And then I was going to share, I guess, at least for folks that are going to May Street, I know like the drop off and the pickup period are super constrained because of COVID. If you're in your car, they don't want you to get out of your car. If you walk up, you need to stay far away. So it definitely makes it difficult to do the in-person outreach that Mark was asking about. So just to share that as a parent perspective. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you.
Tim?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't know whether this is a question for Katie or Jonathan, but when we get to the prioritization part of it, can you kind of run us through what factors will play into the prioritization of the projects?
Yeah, that's a good question. We typically haven't done like a formal rating system. It's been more like discussions within the project management team around project goals, some of those priorities that we mentioned, kind of circling back to those and looking at a developed project list and kind of just getting in there and thinking about what the top couple of priorities are. And we don't do like a full ranked list. Typically, it's like a big list of recommendations kind of organized by like street or corridor. And then we pull out like a top, it's kind of varied by community. Sometimes we pulled out like a top couple of projects where we then provide more information to feed into the grant applications. And so it's usually a top like 2 to 3 projects that rise to the top, and we provide more detail there.
Thanks, that's informative. Maybe one of the things to get at the equity question is to make sure that the prioritization process actually is inclusive of neighborhoods and routes taken by a variety of different people, if you know what I mean. So, I mean, that to me seems where the kind of the rubber hits the road, is that if we have neighborhoods that, that have different people, that we make sure that we're inclusive of those neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
Good idea, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that when I looked at the map for where people have been injured on bike or walking, that those, for me, that was like highest priority. But I think it can be combined with other priorities too. But, the most dangerous for people getting killed or hurt seems like, whoa, that's what we should focus on first. No matter who it is, if it's really super dangerous for people. But we could combine those two together when we come to prioritization.
I think that.
Absolutely, Mayor. In part of creating the applications for the construction grants, especially the ODOT ones, they take into account crash data and incidences of that nature. And it's a graduated scale competitive against hundreds, literally, of other applications across the state. So it will be important for us to identify that type of hazard, those most important ones, to be the most easy to qualify for these competitive grants statewide. We have tried in the past on 18th Street twice now, in 2018 and last year, 2020, and we didn't score high enough. And a lot of it did have to do with relative to other communities. Our neighborhoods are relatively safe. Not saying that they are safe, but relative to, downtown Gresham or other communities like that. But we'll definitely keep that into context when we make our priority list, for sure.
Did you have anything else, Tim?
No, I just want to make, I think it's going to be important for us to have that as a factor as we go through and start to develop lists and prioritize lists, that we're cognizant of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gladys?
I just want to make a comment about some of the conversation that I just heard. And to be honest, to some extent, it saddens me a little that my concern is being dismissed as far as how low the data is for Latino input. because it is really important. And as a council, we have made a commitment to equity, and we have to continue with that commitment. Katie, I know, and Jonathan, I know this is a tough position to be in, and I would be more than happy to stand outside Mercado Guadalajara with you guys, outside Marco Sports with you guys, outside the Latino businesses where folks go, and explain the importance and the why we as a city even care to get this information and that input. Outreach, I can tell you there's not a whole lot of things I know in this planet, but outreach is one thing I absolutely know how to do it, and do it quite well. So I'd be more than happy to sit down and show you guys how to outreach here in our community to ensure that we do have good feedback, especially from those individuals who would really benefit and would feel welcomed to enjoy these safe routes that we have for our community.
Absolutely. I think when we're out there, I think we can, Jonathan, talk more about what this could look like, but I think there's opportunities to add some additional in-person engagement along the lines of what you're describing in between some of the walk audits or while we're in Hood River. So
what I'm really
I'm gonna jump in, Jonathan. There is always an opportunity for the city council to engage with the community. I believe we've invited counselors to the walk audits. You know, sometimes just the presence of council. Thank you, Mayor, for going on, leading one of the bike trains. It really does. There's a lot of value in that, and there's a lot of value in the opportunity there for you to engage as well. So absolutely, we welcome anybody's involvement in some of these outreach events, and we'll be sure to share that information.
Yeah, I think that, I went on the bike train last week on Monday, and Megan Ramey was leading one of those, and this is safe routes to school stuff. And she said, any counselors, make sure to remind we're doing this every day to and from school, 5 days a week. If you guys want to go, just, show up, and she can show you the issues that they're having. It was quite eye-opening, but a great thing to be teaching children how to ride safely. So you guys join one of those if you can. Anything else? Megan?
Yeah, big picture, I think it's valuable. I don't know if maybe I'm just going to direct this at Rachel, if this is something staff can do with their project team, or if it needs to be Alta, of doing a second round of outreach. I think survey is great, but clearly I think analog, especially, and some level of in-person, as much as we can safely do, would be valuable, especially if we're trying to get to communities that are less technologically savvy or otherwise tend to be dismissed. So I guess it's more like what's the process of, do we just ask for some either staff or money resources to be added to that, or?
I think, Counselor, my suggestion would be that we provide some data about who has been reached, because we, and again, this is, our mistake, but focus just on the survey data. So I think first, we've heard your direction. Let us first look at who has been reached, and if there are gaps, then absolutely we want to address those. So that would be my suggestion, and then when we're back the next time, we'll be able to share those with you. And also, we love the suggestion about equity being one of the, underserved neighborhoods being one of the ways that the projects would ultimately be prioritized. So if that's all of council's direction, then that's where we would go.
Okay, since I'm still unmuted, I would definitely like to see equity in neighborhoods and populations of those neighborhoods. And then I guess, would we be able to get data collected on the different means of communication, like for next meeting, or would that take a little while?
Let me go back to the project team, or Katie, maybe you can jump in. I would assume that the school, the folks from the school who are doing the direct outreach would have some data on that.
I didn't ask them to
check.
quantify it in any particular way. We've just been like trying to make these events happen with some very much like changing circumstances with COVID. But I'm sure that they could summarize what they've done to date and who they've been talking to. And I'm sure we can provide at least like a ballpark level of conversations and who they've been speaking with.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
Great. Does anyone else have any suggested routes that we seem to be missing at this point? I think you guys are, you're getting the idea. There's these specific areas that have problems and we're getting them on a list. So great. Thank you. Thanks for your presentation, Katie and Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Council work plan project scope, historic Columbia River Highway. Dustin.
Thank you, Mayor. John, if you could bring up Tara Lingley, she's one of our co-panelists here. Maybe, possibly. Success.
Hello, can you hear me? Great.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, let me queue up our presentation. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, councilors. Is again one of the projects on this year's work plan to promote efficient and safe transportation systems for walkers, bikers, transit riders, and drivers is Cascade Avenue Historic Columbia River Highway Plan update. This project is in collaboration with ODOT, who has programmed and funded this project as the city prepares for the reconnection and the redevelopment of the historic highway through the city of Hood River. The project involves planning and streetscape concepts specific to Cascade Avenue that can be used to update our programmatic agreement, which is in our intergovernmental agreement regarding the facility and our transportation system plan. Tonight, I'm going to provide you a bit of an overview on the project scope and look for council input on some of the guiding principles and share our takeaways with our partners at ODOT, the advisory groups, and the project team as we move into some of the design phases. And my apologies, I think I skipped ahead. We have Tara Lingley with us from ODOT. She is the Columbia River National Scenic Area Coordinator for ODOT. So as part of this overview, tonight we're going to dive into the background of the project, its location, some of the information on why the update is necessary. We're going to discuss some of the project purposes and deliverables, discuss some of the emerging issues, goals, and get some council feedback on whether these goals are aligning with council's, and to see if there's any issues that we've missed or items that council would like to see addressed in the design, again, to share with the project team, and identify the next steps in the process. A little background on the Cascade Avenue and US Highway 30. This project in this street is actually, the historic highway is the first planned scenic roadway built in the United States, which was completed between 1914 and 1922. And today it's listed and protected on the National Register of Historic Places. It is a state-run facility under the jurisdiction of the Oregon Department of Transportation. As far as the city goes, it's the only east-west street, through the entire city. It is a critical component to our local transportation system, providing access to downtown, the Heights, and all three interchanges to the interstate, exit 62, exit 63, exit 64, as well as Highway 35, just for starters. The design, again, is controlled by a programmatic agreement. This is an interagency operating plan and design plan. It's city, county, state, and I believe the feds have also signed on to this, which is now reaching, it's approximately 20 years old, and is a part of our transportation system plan. And then last updated, we've adopted and looked at a number of intersections and major gateways within a series of significant projects now within our TSP. The next question is, why is the Cascade update necessary and why is it prioritized on your work plan? Since the last full TSP adoption, there's been several changes to the Cascade operating conditions and the assumptions which impact the future in historic highway and facilities. First and most noteworthy in some people, the historic highway connection is coming. It is now nearing the last 5 miles of completion. And it will be a 73-mile regional route that will pass through Cascade. It includes major bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, linking Portland or Troutdale to the Dalles and running immediately through town. Currently, we do experience limited intersection capacity from Rand to exit 62. And we regulate this currently with ODOT through an interchange access management plan. Development opportunities and growth pressures on the west side continue to mount. And the existing facility design includes limited pedestrian and bicycle facilities, as well as some aged infrastructure. Looking at where the project boundaries occur, we have a couple blowups. Again, this is a series, as a component to a rather large project. Although it focuses on Cascade Avenue from exit 62 to the 13th. The historic Columbia River Highway project runs 73 miles. This is a blow up of the entire project. Another blow up of our region, basically between Mitchell Point, the current western terminus, and the Dalles or the Twin Tunnels, which is the really eastern portion. And another blow up of how do we fit within the grand scheme of things. So this is the scope of our project as it impacts Hood River. And again, as mentioned, it is a 73-mile stretch network now developed to Mitchell Point and to the Twin Tunnels to the east. Purpose of the project. This was an important scoping question with ODOT. Why are they invested in this project? Why should we be invested in this project? Really, it helps create a shared understanding of where the street design elements are needed, where those elements are going to guide the future development of the corridor, both the street itself as well as surrounding land use. Its purpose is to inform changes to this programmatic agreement that we as the agencies subscribe to, and to provide certainty and clarity for developers as they develop along the corridor and as we see development occur. Some of the project deliverables include a design refinement plan done at a block by block scale that look at where these streetscape elements should go, and it'll include associated planning level costs. We will expect the project to deliver an access management plan, how property accesses the highway, how do we control traffic in and out, and how do we review permits. And finally, it'll include some design concurrence for the ODOT blueprint for urban design. This is a relatively new process through ODOT, and Terry, you can correct me if I misrepresent this. It's really a new approach that ODOT takes to look at not only roadways and classifications, but also the context in which they're built, taking a unique look at the future land uses, it's really what we'd call a context sensitive look at transportation facilities and how they interact with the environment. And the blueprint takes these in consideration, and how do we evaluate future scenarios and review that infrastructure.
Yeah, and Dustin, if I may pop in here, it also provides a lot more design flexibility than the ODOT of yore. I know you all have probably heard tell that we're fairly inflexible, and so this gives us a framework in which we can steal some space from one place and put it in a different place, and so that is kind of not business as usual for ODOT. So pretty excited about applying it here.
And it provides the option for specific elements such as road width, bike lanes, sidewalk dimensions, and again is based on the unique circumstances of this particular facility. Based on some of our early stakeholder input, historical analysis of the work that has been done over the past many years, and on the ground review, the project team is starting to detail some of the emerging opportunities, some of the constraints, goals and guiding principles that will influence the upcoming designs and concepts. The preliminary maps included in your packets highlight some of the areas of concern and opportunity, and really notwithstanding some of the limiting features such as constrained right-of-ways, land acquisitions, streetscape and intersection improvements, aging infrastructure, conflicting access points, and the major capital investments really needed to fund a multi-million-dollar transportation project. These maps help articulate some of the on-the-ground issues that are most likely familiar to all of us as users, businesses, communities, and agencies, but really are really important to articulate so that the design team and the project team has a good awareness of some of the local conditions that we're faced with. And now looking forward from this on-the-ground assessment to some of the guiding principles, we've seen several themes and goals that have emerged and re-emerged, honestly, about Future Cascade and its role within the city. The principles and goals that I'm going to walk through really are a synthesis of our planning work over the past 3+ years and then some. They're also take some of the goals and themes that have come from some of the larger projects, such as the TSP, the neighborhood network and framework plans that we've worked through with the city. And they're also critical to guide the project team as they design some of these streetscape layouts to meet the community needs, the community vision. And the first really starts to emphasize travel modes. This is a statement regarding Future Cascade. It will be a multimodal corridor with transit and pedestrian bicycle facilities that enhance mode, that enhance access, enhance equality and safety of all users. The next refers to a cultural and some of the acknowledgement of the historical resource of the highway. That Future Cascade will be designed to enhance the historic integrity of the Columbia River Highway and the prior history and peoples of the Columbia. Onto the land use goals, Future Cascade should support a mix of high quality commercial and residential uses that have an identity and support the city's economic opportunities and housing goals. And then the role as the gateway, which is probably one of the most recently discussed when it came to the TSP adoption, where Future Cascade will serve as a gateway to Hood River, designed to create a sense of place and support the livability of the entire community, rather than just serve as a context insensitive thoroughfare. So our ask of council is really, this is a point where we wanted to check in with some of these emerging themes to make sure that we're in alignment with some of the principles take council feedback on issues, opportunities, constraints, items that we missed, and that you would like to see addressed in the design in the project to make sure we can share these with our partners and the design team. And so for a short review, I cut some of the key goals and put them up here just for ready reference for your input. So if anyone has any, I can take a couple comments here, and then really what we have left is just to move on and advertise what's next in the process and project.
Does anyone have any comments or questions? Megan?
Yeah, big picture, the 4 goals I think sound really good. And I think what I'm gonna suggest could fit into a number of these, but I guess maybe I want it explicitly, or I want to see if other people want it explicitly spelled out of, especially knowing our current cascade of very limited shade and public space that makes it pretty unwelcoming. I think it, can be, if we're talking about livability in a gateway and a high quality residential and commercial area, but something about, having some of those public spaces or rest stops along the way, or creating, the little parklet type things that provide kind of that break in what is otherwise a very strong concrete area currently. I'm gonna let you phrase that if other people agree, but it's something I'd like to make sure we're creating as we go.
Others? Mark?
Thanks. I'm excited that we're working on this. This is a really good thing. I have no complaints about what we're outlining. I do have a concern just about how, this is the least developed part on our main thoroughfare, and it's going to develop whether we're ready for it or not. And so how do we timeline wise make sure that we're defining these things so that 10 years from now when it's built out, that it's what we want? Does that make sense? Is it going to be like an overlay like we did for the waterfront, or a master plan like we did for the heights, and then that goes into drawings that have teeth? Or is it just in the TSP, or how's it work?
So for this, the scope of the ODOT project is really the roadway itself. Thinking about the land use and corridor really goes only as far as making sure that, we talk about future land use scenario. And the assumption that we're using right now is that it's that we laid it out as a mix of high quality commercial and residential, both. So that's what ODOT needs to know is this a mixed use corridor? Is this a auto oriented thoroughfare that's 5-lane cross sections? They need to know some of that scenario right now to help build the road. And I think based on what we've heard and what the takeaway is I expect, based on our read and what we've conveyed and what the consultants have pulled, is, all right, your past documents have stated the city needs to use some of this for residential. It should anticipate residential in this area, as well as larger format developments along Cascade. I think that's the level that they're looking at now. When we get into, and if you want to get into an area specific plan, such as land use, such as the waterfront, that would be the next layer. That would be another layer. So ODOT right now they're not going to land use plan it. They're looking at the roadway, but we want to be very mindful of what are we supporting? The transportation and land use element really they can't really be separated in a lot of ways. So what are we supporting? We supporting a mixed use, or we just, and I think that's based on our read of the previous work. That's what the city has stated.
That it would be mixed use. Yeah.
That's the
Wait.
hope. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that exits are going to be crucial. How many, because if you have an exit on every single lot, it's going to be difficult for pedestrians and bicyclists if you have exits on every one. So I think those are going to be some of the issues that in the long run that shared accesses are going to be necessary in some spots, as we've tried to do some already.
Yeah, Mayor, that's a great point. A part of the deliverables that Dustin mentioned was looking at that access management piece and how do we consolidate and how do we move to side streets, where possible. So absolutely, that's part of the livability, walkability, bikeability of this corridor.
I have one thing that I wanted to see if we could add, and then Gladys, well, right next. Something on the effect of future Cascade Avenue should have additional exits that connect to routes that may be more bike or walk friendly. Because I know, this is the route, the historic highway route, and then that's what it is. We're working with the historic committee and ODOT on that. But there may be other routes through the town that bicyclists decide they want to take because it isn't as busy, because there isn't as many exits for commercial things. And I think that we need to be cognizant of making sure that there are some kind of pathways, roads, accesses to those spots that bicyclists may desire to take that won't be as busy, just in the planning stage. Gladys?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dustin and Tara. I agree with these 4 points on here, specifically about, well, the point that Councillor Saunders just brought up right now, in regards to, there's going to be a lot of concrete. Are there going to be something pretty to look at in between? But with that, how are we intentionally thinking about an inclusive design in the sense of how are we capturing like the history of Hood River itself to ensure that we are creating a space that folks feel like they're, there's my culture being represented. Well, here's my culture, and here's, the culture before us represented on here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, and I tried to write that into one of the goals that got shortened down here. I don't think it's, from my perspective, and I think my read was, it's not just the history of Hood River. And I put the history of and peoples of the Columbia, because the historic Columbia River Highway, and it's, although it may have been built between 1914 and 1922, the Columbia River has a history that long predates, us. So I think it should represent, not only the integrity of the roadway and the architectural and engineering feat, but to, we should be looking at cultural identity beyond the confines of modern Western engineering.
Absolutely. And really working with the partners, such as CRIPFIT and all the other agencies that really are representing some of these diverse groups, and intentionally working with, local artists that do represent the history of all of Hood River, or just all of Gorge.
Thank you. That's good. And I'll probably tighten up the comment to be representative of that, and take in all your comments as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. You were muted, but I think I read your lips to call on me. Was that correct? And I apologize. I actually missed a bit of this presentation, which is excellent. What I caught, my laptop died, but I found some power. If I could just, I guess, share my thoughts. I really like this presentation. I'm excited for this development project. I'm thrilled that ODOT is taking an interest in our community in this important way. I did notice the wonderful roundabout concept that was illustrative there coming into town. And I think implicit in that is that the current intersection of Cascade and Mount Adams just, I think, leaves a little bit wanting relative to ideal traffic flow. And I know from prior meetings, that's a focus of all this. So I'm encouraged by the idea of making that intersection flow better. one thing I'll just mention, there's that little stub of what used to be the Way to Country Club that sort of sits idle. And I don't know what the regulatory environment is surrounding that, but I've always thought that there's still a remnant of an asset there that perhaps in the traffic design can be considered to breathe back something, even if it's just a bike lane, because there is that wonderful little way we used to be able to get to country clubs so efficiently. So if there's I just throw that out as, and not that others wouldn't have already thought of that, but to the extent that can be brought back to life in some fashion to gain some sort of flow of efficiency, should at least possibly be considered. The other thing that comes to mind is, we have our Rand Road development, and I am wanting to make sure that we are doing everything we can do to keep that neighborhood safe as it grows, because I think there's going to be a flow of foot traffic down to sort of Walmart and Taco Time, and a flow upward away from this, maybe up into the neighborhoods, into the middle school. But and I was thinking of this during the last presentations of safe routes to school, because I'm thinking about that area. I'm also thinking about there's a manufactured home kind of neighborhood right at Cascade and Mount Hood that would love to have robust walking facilities so that is safe, so that I'm sure things that people already thought about, but you asked for our opinion, so I'm sharing my thoughts. I really like the mayor's comments about alternative connectivity, because I think the reality is no matter how wonderful and beautiful this street might become, there is going to be a draw toward lesser known paths for bicyclists, because that's just what the way locals think. So having a little sort of off the grid mindset when it comes to getting bikes through town, I think is a really wise suggestion that the mayor had mentioned, is one that's come up before. And this general idea of a green belt through town seems like this is a vehicle to help achieve that, and we should be sort of tying into other options in our city planning as well. I love Councilor Saunders' idea of a sort of a respite zone and kind of little pocket green spaces. I think that was a wonderful suggestion, because there is sort of a I don't know, a concrete industrial feel to this, and there's just a way perhaps we can improve this for everyone's aesthetic benefit by having something like what Councilor Sanders I thought was a good suggestion. And I'm also on board with the idea of a long-term residential mixed use vision for this. So I thought it was brilliant, Dustin, to be planning with that long-term vision in mind. And then I also liked Councilor Rivera's suggestion about kind of cultural inclusivity, and the thought of a mural came to mind. There's some wonderful murals in the Dalles, and we're a little light on murals in Hood River, and we have some wonderful artists here. So I can't think of a wall necessarily a mural might go on, but I guess I just share the possibility of a mural somewhere along the line to capture some of the things that I think Councilor Rivera was appropriately pointing out.
Thank you, Eric. Jessica?
I didn't really have anything to add to the goals. I thought I support what my colleagues have said. I just had two general questions, and one is the project envision reducing any driveways on and access points onto, yeah, and then also will it need to include right-of-way acquisition? Because I was thinking with the turn lane down the middle and all the bike lanes and sidewalks we want, it seems like it's going to also identify right-of-way acquisition. Is that true?
Yeah, that's one of the early issues I think mentioned, was the limited amount of right-of-way that is there can really, we should be prepared to some extent for that. Especially the more ambitious we get with our facilities and green areas, the more the likelihood and public art and public culture that all, with a finite amount of real estate, that the more we add to that, the more likelihood there will be needed property acquisition. And especially with intersections, we talk about a roundabout. Love the gateway concept. We love that idea. It's traffic calming. That is a lot of real estate. So that was one thing that the project consultants wanted to identify, as well as our willingness to, how bad do you want these? Do you want to work within the real estate you have, or are the facilities more important? And so if you have any feelings on that,
the question is who's going to pay? That's the question.
well, it's us. I guess I would support adding right of way to meet some of these goals.
Megan?
I guess to that point, and I might have missed it because sorry, my roommate was here, but are we like, is the current right of way, we couldn't really achieve any of these goals, or can we achieve, 40% of them? Or, I mean, I'm sure it doesn't, you don't have a percentage, but like, what's the scale of the issue?
Once we get a design, we'll know, but I think I think there's a lot of scale. So it's really, we're gonna know more as we get into this preliminary design and what the impacts will be. But I'm confident based on Rand Road, and based on the intersections, based on ADA, and really the goal of trying to provide facilities for bikes and pedestrians that aren't just measured in paint lines. I expect it to be noteworthy, and we'll discuss it more.
Okay, I guess to Jessica's end of, I would really like to see us try to meet these, and I think we can do some walk back of reality, but these are all really important goals, I think, for the community, as well as visitors. So,
Mark, did you have something?
Yeah, a couple of quick questions, I think, for Tara. One is, it's my understanding that if we wanted to continue the bike trail on West Cliff in addition to the historic highway, that's sort of on us and it's outside of the scope of this effort. Is that true?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. The second is, you can see that we're all excited about the circle at Mount Adams, and we have been as a community and a council for a long time. Is it true that ODOT is hip to that if we can magically own the land and stuff?
So I have a couple of concerns with that. If you all think back to the West Side area concept plan, that sketch that Dustin showed is in that plan. However, it's very heavily caveated. One concern is that roundabouts need a lot of right of way. And we were talking about the mobile manor. It's right there. So that's a decision that would need to be made, kind of trade-offs thinking about that. The other issue is that where roundabouts have come up to the Historic Columbia River Highway Advisory Committee, they have been roundly dismissed. So I believe Cascade Locks was looking into one at the toll road in Wanapa. And the concern there is that it, quote unquote, we can discuss kind of the finite details about that, but it reroutes the historic highway. And really the only element of the historic highway on this section of Cascade that is historically accurate is literally where it is. And so like none of the other elements are historic or contribute to the historic nature of the road in that section. I keep poking my historian to see what the implications are there. There's some legal implications. So anything that is found by the Secretary of Interior to degrade a historic, national historic landmark, of which it rises above the National Historic Registry. Generally, you can't use federal funds to do that work if there's found to be an impact. We haven't done that analysis yet. There's also some limitations using state funds to, if you are found to be having impacts to a historic, national historic landmark. So there's some work to be done. There's some process. We have seen the West Side Area Concept Plan. We have talked to developers who are very interested in a roundabout, but there might be some hard decisions balancing some trade-offs. I don't want to say, I don't have the authority to say yes, but the advisory committee, just so you know where the advisory committee has historically stood, unintended, they are unlikely to go for a roundabout at this location. And also, they're advisory only, they don't make decisions, but ODOT and OPRD, who helps us manage the state trail, very rarely go against what they recommend to us. So I will put in a plug. This Wednesday, we have a supplemental Historic Columbia River Highway Advisory Committee. It's a public meeting from 1 to 3. It's on Zoom. If you go to historichighway.org, there's a link to join. So you can sit in and listen to, they will get a very similar presentation as you all did this evening. And you can kind of hear what their thoughts are, because, you know, as identified in one of the opportunities, that roundabout is there. So.
Right. So I think, you know, I fully support roundabout as option A, but what basically, based on what you just said, how do we define what an option B might look like? I mean, it is the gateway intersection, you know, that frankly sort of sucks right now. And, you know, how could that look if we had to, if we can't have a roundabout, how would it look? And I don't have a mind's eye picture of what that could be. And maybe this effort could help with that.
Yeah, so the interchange area management plan, which predated the West Side Area Concept Plan, has what we generically call intersection control. And so that could be a signal, that could be a roundabout. There might be something else out there that we're missing, but some sort of metering, you know, where people want to go. So those are the two that rise to the top when you say intersection control, roundabout, signal. I think the volumes are too high for just stop controlled. So, you know, stop signs.
Yeah. But if it's a signal, how can it look appropriate for its role as a gateway to the city?
I would direct you to the city of Troutdale. So there is a signal off of, I'm going to get the road wrong. I think it's 257th. And it actually turns on to what they call the Historic Columbia River Highway, which isn't managed by ODOT, but it's a signal. But then set back from the signal, there's this lovely arch and it says, "Welcome to Troutdale." And it's got thematic art on either side. So there are ways to do it with a signal. But I am not a landscape architect, so I'll leave that to the really smart visual people that we've hired.
So you guys see it's a signal or it's a roundabout, and roundabout has its own set of challenges in this case. Okay.
And frankly, so does a signal. I mean, they're not cheap, or, you know, and then who maintains, and then, you know.
Which brings me to my last question, which is, we are hopefully very soon on the Rand Road implementation. And does this, hopefully that, you know, that's a badly needed signal just for safety. And I'm just hoping that nothing that we're talking about tonight impacts what we're doing at Rand.
No, my understanding is that Rand is, well, I know that Rand is moving forward. I actually need to get an update with the project manager, but yes, because Rand is a construction project and this is a planning project, that will definitely, you will see that on the ground way before you see what comes out of this process, unless it's kind of smaller, kind of more of those design element things like trash cans, thematic trash cans, or, you know, pedestrian scale lighting, or, you know, whatever it is.
Great. And then last question, I think it's the same answer as Second and Oak, which is still on the historic highway, is I think we're really close to building that too. And is that your understanding as well?
I'll defer to Dustin because that's actually a city project.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Quickly on Second and Oak, I think we will have public works projects queued up for that with through possibly urban renewal. So not associated and not with this one. And it will more than likely outrace this.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I've recorded a bunch of comments. Sorry, I can't see what we have here. So I'll move on once I'm queued.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So looking to what's next in the process and where do we go from here? I want to provide a little project map implementation. The next steps we'll be getting. So we are here, design team, and actually presented this last year in March 2020. So we moved one step forward. And again, this process is going to help inform the change in the programmatic agreement or the update of the programmatic agreement, as well as update in a transportation system plan as we see fit. So once we get a little further down the road, that's where the city's comp plan comes into play. That's where we start adopting the cross sections and really getting into the authorization for funding, which is a very important feature. And then from there, we actually move into funding and construction. That's really, this is a complex project, really a large component of a nation federal sized infrastructure project that just happens to run through the city and is hugely important. So has a number of players, a number of stakeholders, and a number of parts. And I'm really excited that we're actually really digging into those that we can have some control on the local level here. So this is where the project is in a kind of a macro scale. For this phase, we're wrapping up some of the stakeholder input. Somebody mentioned some of the people involved along the corridor, some of the property owners trying to forecast what their redevelopment schedules are, some of their interest. We've looked through some of our old documents, and there's plenty of them, previous policy work, and we're going to be moving into draft designs. So now really starting to look at the graphics, what I call the eyewash, and some of these visionary plans and some of the infrastructure. So we're going to be moving into that in the next couple months with the MIG and DKS team, the design and traffic folks. So we'll take your information that you've been provided or that we've taken from you and help inform some of their decision making. And we'll be back with some details. So thank you all for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tara and Dustin. Dustin, Tara, one more question. So we're doing the groundbreaking, or we've done the groundbreaking for Mitchell Point. And I see construction trucks, looks like they're going up there now. So that's like, woohoo. What is the timing for that section? And I mean, not just the tunnel, but basically being connected all the way from there to the cantilevered area that goes on the other side of the freeway to West Cliff Drive. What is the timing for that section being completed?
Yeah, and I wish I had an answer, and I wish I had the cold hard cash in my hand, but I do not. So Mitchell Point, as you noted, we had a virtual groundbreaking last week. That is projected to be complete in 2023. Viento to Mitchell, which is on the other side from Hood River, will start construction the end of this year. 2021 will take about 3 years to complete. So we're looking at 2024, having everything complete from the Wyeth trailhead all the way into Mitchell Point Tunnel. And from there, we need approximately $53 million to complete the state trail. We have put in for they're not called earmarks anymore, whatever they are that are similar to, but not earmarks, congressional funding of some sort. So we put in for some of that. We're anticipating applying for the Federal Lands Access Program grant. The call for projects we're anticipating is the end of this month. And then there's also another federal program called the Nationally Significant Federal and Transportation Land or Tribal Land Program. That is another source of funding that would be applicable here. So we're anticipating a call for projects for that this year. And so I'm hoping to dig through all the couch cushions I can find to get that $53 million to be able to make us whole. But because we don't have the funding, I can't tell you when it will be close. But my personal goal is 2021. If we go, if we're running full speed, full tilt ahead, the earliest we could be finished is 2026, probably.
Okay, and
And
2026.
that's if we get funding this year. Sorry.
And that's 2026, which would get us connected to the end of West Cliff Drive at Ruthven Point. So
Ruthven Park.
Ruthven Park. we better have our ducks in a row dang well by 2026, because then they will be into town coming down the road. So that's why I'm trying to get, how fast do we as a city have to be ready for the people that are going to be coming once this thing opens. So thanks.
Yeah, earliest 2026. So
Okay.
if I was a betting person, you probably have more time.
Okay, great. Thanks. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for your time this evening, counselors.
All right. Trying to see how long we're going to get through this. I can't hardly talk. I need some water. Let's just take two. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the work session. We will go into regular council meeting in 2 minutes. I have to get some water. Thanks. Okay, I think we're about ready to start. Just checking if Gladys is there. There she is. Okay, great. All right. Let's go back into session and open the regular council meeting. Do we have any agenda additions or corrections?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay. We have a consent agenda with council meeting minutes and an OLCC permit application. Any questions or need to take Megan?
I don't know that means take it off, but I just, April 12th meeting minutes, I think Eric had voted no on middle housing and it said he voted yes.
I couldn't catch that, Megan.
Let me mumble at you. April 12th, the ordinance 2061 middle housing, it says that Eric voted yes, but I believe he voted no, although he might remember better. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think we should correct that.
Yes, I'm pretty sure Eric voted no on that, on the middle housing, correct, Eric?
Yes, I think that's right. Thank you for catching that.
So could I make a motion that we approve it as amended?
Sure.
Mayor, it looks like the attorney wants to jump in here.
You're cutting out, Rachel.
Go ahead, Dan.
The approach that Megan has suggested works fine. Approve as amended, if that's what you're asking.
Well, then I would move we approve the consent agenda with the amendment to the April 12th minutes noted tonight.
I second that.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the council meeting minutes from April 12th being amended to reflect the correct vote of Eric's nay on the middle housing ordinance. Any more discussion? And Megan made that motion and Gladys seconded it. Roll call vote, Mark? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Tim?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Jessica?
Hi.
Gladys?
Aye.
Megan?
Yes.
And chair votes aye. All right, regular business items, third quarter financial performance report. Will?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor and City Council. Very last pages of your packet. I know this has been a long meeting. This, I think, item is going to be quick and easy. There's not much to report as far as expenditures. Everything's running right in line with our previous quarterly report to the council, and it's all good news on the revenue side. So we've plugged in the expected corona virus relief funds into the estimated into the year-end estimates, And then there's also just real broad-based improvement across all the revenue sources, but really focused in lodging taxes is the one that's shot back the most. And I'm gonna just share real quick. This is a graph that's in the proposed budget, but obviously only as of the data that was available when the proposed budget went to print. But I wanted to add a couple months onto there just to show that the kind of strong rebound in lodging taxes has continued for 3 months in a row now, up double digits as compared to even pre-COVID revenue. So that's these latter ones out here. These are not necessarily, these are about medium months. So it's not really moving the needle huge, but if this type of improvement continues on to these next few months into the summer, it could really mean a major positive revenue impact for the city. So altogether, the let's see, ending fund balance was improved over what's even in the proposed budget by, and let me get the exact number here from my report. By nearly $300,000. And so it'll be up to the budget committee could choose to recognize that higher expectation in the approved budget, or it's just part of our practice too to wait for the audit, and we'll be certainly truing up to the audited numbers next December as well, which I think is just as good of an approach. So with that, I'll answer any questions you have.
Questions from anyone? It looks like good news all the way around.
The recovery has been coming back really strong.
That's great. Do you need a motion or, you know,
Just
okay.
informational
This
item
is
for you.
just head nods. You reported what's happening to us. Great, fantastic. All right, no questions. So we have city recorder, reading of ordinance 2062 transportation system plan for the second time by title only.
Your Honor, I'd like to entertain a motion for the second and final reading of ordinance 2062 by title only.
So moved.
Jessica
Yeah.
has made a motion, that motion,
I'll second that.
and Megan has seconded.
Counselor Haney,
Aye.
Counselor Saunders,
Yes.
Counselor Coonihan,
Aye.
Counselor Meta,
Aye.
Counselor Rivera,
Aye.
Counselor Zanmiller,
Yes.
Your Honor.
Yes,
Ordinance 2062, an ordinance amending the Hood River Comprehensive Plan, Goal 12, by adopting amendments to the Transportation System Plan, TSP, and amending the Hood River Municipal Code, Title 16, subdivisions.
thank you, Jen. Appreciate it. Mayor call. Well, I kind of announced what I was going to do at Mayor Call already. I went on the bike ride, the Safe Routes to Schools bike train, and it was great. And I actually met the new CAT bus manager. Patty Fink is retiring, and I think there's going to be maybe several months of overlap. But they have a new gentleman that came in that's just basically ridden buses all of his life. And so it was his first day. He arrived the evening before, late in the evening, and it was his first day in Hood River, and he was on the bike train. So that was kind of exciting. And, try and go on the bike train if you guys can, either, when school lets out or early in the morning. It's a great experience. Gives you a whole new perspective getting around. I don't ride my bike too much because I do feel it's pretty dangerous, but it kind of gives you a new perspective for kids getting to school. That's all I have. Council call, Gladys.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing. I have nothing for tonight.
Okay, Jessica.
I also have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Eric,
Nothing from me, Mayor. Thank
Tim,
Nothing for me tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Mark?
I'm just gonna keep up the streak here. I can't think of anything witty.
Okay, Megan?
I also have nothing tonight.
Oh, wow.
I think
Okay.
first.
Well, we have another meeting on Wednesday, a budget meeting, which will be urban renewal and city budget on Wednesday. Is that at a 5, Rachel? Or we're not?
Urban renewal is at 6.
Urban renewal is at 6 and
And
city
then-
council's at 7. Is that correct?
Yeah, the city council, no earlier than 7.
No earlier than 7. Okay. And do we know if we're going to have a meeting in 2 weeks or not
Yeah.
yet?
Thank you, Mayor. We are planning to not have a meeting on the 24th. We have not officially announced that. We're just waiting to see if there's any pressing items. But if we do have a meeting, will likely be very short. But at this point, we're planning on not having a meeting.
Okay. We're kind of wrapping a lot of things up, and we've had a lot of meetings with budget committee, and we have another meeting coming up on the 21st. Is it the 21st, a Saturday meeting? Some board work training. So we have a lot of meetings on our schedule already. So Rachel and I had kind of talked about it, like if we don't have a pressing thing that we have to do, that we would maybe have a week off because of all these other extra meetings that we're having around this time of year. All right, everyone, thank you for everything. Appreciate it. We are adjourned at 8:43.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.